Join me on my pump foil journey this year and see the progress I've made in just 8 months. Before this, I tried to learn prone foiling in waves, but I never went back to it. I was intimidated by the foil. So in the spring of 2025, I decided to teach myself pump foiling instead. It seemed a lot more approachable and safer. For the setup, I didn't want to invest too much right away, and finding secondhand gear locally, specifically for pump foiling, was hard. So I got a Replica 1310 PNG foil from AliExpress. And for the board, I used a piece of Baltic birch plywood with a piece of styrofoam glued to the bottom to make it buoyant. The docks weren't put out yet, since the ice had just melted, so I had to make my own dock start contraption. I'm wearing a 6'5" wetsuit because the water temperature, if I recall, was just above freezing. The week before, there was still ice on the lake. I used a bicycle helmet for protection because that's what I had. My board is a piece of styrofoam on a piece of plywood. But it works, it doesn't bend.
That was good.
To get a feel for the foil, I started by pushing off and jumping on it on my knees to understand how the foil works. Trying to throw some pumps into the mix as well. For my first session, it was a lot of fun. It was a little unnerving to have this big foil that could hit me, but I made sure to always hold on to the board.
He's going really far.
By my second session, I was getting a bit farther pumping on my knees. At this point, I realized I was going to get really good at swimming until I could make it back to the dock, which won't be for quite some time. I didn't bother filming a bunch of the sessions. Fast forward to May, the water temperature's warmer now, and I'm in a 3-2 wetsuit, mostly to prevent cuts if I hit the foil. The hat I'm wearing keeps the sun off and has some padding for protection. At this point, I'm getting used to how to ditch the foil safely so it doesn't hit me as well. I'm starting to transition to putting my feet on the board. This part was really difficult because I'm bent over and holding onto the board so it doesn't go flying, all the while trying to build that muscle memory. I also upgraded to a proper pump board, a Gong 95cm Kluber. In hindsight, I wish I had gotten the 80cm version since the 95 feels too long. There's a lot of back and forth, pumping out and then having to swim back. And the spot I practice at isn't super deep, but it's nice because I can partially walk back to the dock after each attempt. Also, I built an e-foil so I could at least get some time on foil, so I had a sense of what it felt like to be on foil. It helped a little, but there is no shortcut for learning to dock start in my opinion, just lots of jumps off the dock until you build the muscle memory. Alright, we're going to try the 3D printed foil and see if we can get some pumps going on this. 1600 square centimeters, low aspect ratio. In this session, I'm trying out a 3D printed low aspect wing on an AliExpress kite foil fuselage, the same one I used on my e-foil. I learned a lot from this setup since the front wing is mounted really close to the mast. I kept landing with my front foot first, which caused the nose of the board to dip. On the 1310, I could recover because that foil has so much lift and a low stall speed, and also where the foil mounts to the fuselage is actually a bit further from the mast. After reviewing the footage, I realized I should have been landing differently. The rear foot first, then the front foot, or ideally maybe both at the same time. So partway through the session, I changed up how I was landing. Near the end of the session, I started to get a feel for it. It's good to try different gear to see what works for you and just to experiment to get a feel for different foils. Here I'm back on the 1310, attempting to let go of the board and glide as far as I can. That was pretty good. I actually got a couple pumps in. I throw in a few pumps as well. The feeling is very foreign to say the least. Oh man, my best one yet. And doing it standing instead of on my knees, that is a really, really different experience. I'm getting some really good consistent glides in this session. Getting a feel for standing on the board is just really great progress. And my dock start launch, or what I'm doing is actually a dead start, is very consistent. So that repetition is really paying off. It's been great that I can actually get a few pumps in as well. Here I am at session 13, and I'm trying a different dock because my normal dock was busy. Unfortunately, the area around this dock was really rocky, so I managed to scratch up my foil a little, but that's the price of fun, I suppose. This session was just more of the same, just getting a feel for the board and foil, and learning where the foil goes when I wipe out or stop pumping. Progress is very slow when learning to pump foil. There are so many variables you have to manage, and I really, at this point, have no clue of what to change, so I'm just still learning and getting a feel for everything. I also switch back to landing front foot first, just to see which way I like better. And sometimes you feel like you're regressing, and then you get a decent one. Session 14. Just some incremental improvements. Slow progress, like I mentioned before. I want to take a moment to say, if you decide to learn to pump foil, especially at a public spot like I'm using, be ready for people to come up and ask questions. The ones I've gotten are, how does that work? What is that thing? Where did you get it? And my personal favorite, and surprisingly #1 question I get asked, how much does that cost? I've learned to not bother giving the actual price. I usually just say a couple $100, and even then, I still get that look of, that thing costs that much? Alright, I'm starting to get the hang of it. Now I gotta figure out the pumping motion, because my dock start is good. But I find it's kind of like riding a motorcycle or a bicycle. You gotta look where you're going. I have a tendency to look right in front of me, and what happens is you fall. So I gotta think now, get used to just looking to the horizon and then get the pumping motion. At the end of this session, I'm starting to get a feel for how to keep the board level by shifting my weight. I still have the bad odd start, where I don't land correctly. Repetition is really the key, just doing it over and over. I estimate I'm over 800 launches at session 15. Here you can see it's pretty windy. It makes it more difficult for all aspects of pump foiling. The dock start, bouncing on the board, the ripples in the water makes it turbulent. I'm still holding onto the board and let it level out before I start trying the pump. The 1310 has a tremendous amount of glide, and while it's a big wing and the consensus is that it's a hard wing to pump, I found that the glide it gives really helped me get a feel for being on foil. The large surface area makes it incredibly stable, however, it really doesn't turn the best, which I come to understand later. Session 16, I forgot my booties, but I was getting the hang of not kicking the foil, so it wasn't a big deal, but I still like wearing them just in case. I'm just making slow progress, figuring out how to pump the foil, and increasing my glide time. I'm trying to coordinate my body movement with the up and down motion of pumping, and it's just a lot of stuff that you have to factor in order to make the board move forward. For session 18, here you can see how my front foot lands first and gives me a big burst of speed, but it's not ideal if I was using a smaller wing. I'm starting to get some decent hops in, and I can feel the foil go further and glide. To give a different perspective, I thought it'd be fun to give the GoPro mouth mount a try, so you can see what it looks like actually pumping the board. All right, beautiful day. I forget how many sessions I've had in, but we're still on the 1310 on the Gong Kluber, 95 centimeters. Beautiful day. Around session 20, I decided to switch up my dock start launch. I had been landing with my front foot first, but now I'm retraining myself to land rear foot first. Landing rear foot first helps me keep the board level, especially when I eventually want to switch to smaller front wings. I'm staying higher up on the mast when I launch, which made a big difference to get more time on foil. I've increased my pumping distance before I fall, so that means lots of swing back to the dock. I was really happy with this session. Felt like I was making some real progress. But of course, you have the occasional mess up.
You're good at it. Very good.
For session 21, I'm trying to throw in some turning. I really have no idea how to turn, but I'm doing something. It took me long enough to go straight, so this was my next challenge. My pumps are being more exaggerated and stronger now. It's not efficient, but I can feel the foil surge when I pump, which was a great feeling. I know I'm doing something right. I'm starting to get some turns in and actually aiming the board back towards the dock, but I usually lose speed and fall. You can see also the lake where I am foiling is very grassy, and my foil sometimes catches on some lake grass. And you can really tell when that happens. It slows you right down. For session 23, I got a new foil, the legendary Axis 1150 PNG. Well, I have no doubt this is going to be a lot harder because I'm so used to the 1310 and it's got so much glide, whereas this 1150 with the different fuselage, this will be really different. So let's see how we make out. Surprisingly, on my first launch, I didn't faceplant. All right, the cadence needs to be a lot faster than the 1310. And it's also a lot more sensitive to nose down. So I was a little too nose down on that. So I'm gonna try to keep more even pressure. The 1150 definitely doesn't have as much glide as the 1310. After a few tries, I started getting a feel for the 1150. I was even getting some decent turns in with the 1150, so I'm pretty pleased with my progress. I'm back on the 1310 using a time lapse for session 24, so you can see how much swimming I've been doing after each fall. For session 25, I'm just practicing my turns. I want to be able to make it back to the dock so I don't have to swim as much. I'm able to sometimes recover if I touch down on the water now too, and get back high up on the mast. So that's a really big improvement, I think. I was really happy with this run because I was almost able to make it right back to the dock. But I'm going to count it that I made it back to the dock. For the next few sessions, I'm just going to show a few clips from each one as I progress, as progression from here on out is very slow and incremental. I'm consistently making it back to the dock now too, as long as I don't go too far out. For this session, I'm back on the 1150 PNG just to switch it up a little bit. And I'm able to turn it a little bit better now because it is a smaller wing than the 1310. So for session 31, I'm just trying to increase my endurance at this point. I'm getting a real feel for how to pump the foil now, but I find my rear leg is burning out, so I need to equal out my pumping. The really big sine wave motion of my board is really using up a lot of energy, so I'm not efficient at all. The board should almost be flat. Session 34 was interesting because the water was like dead calm, so it makes it really hard to see where your board is in relation to the top of the water, the surface of the water. It makes it really hard to not hit the water. You can see in the span of a few weeks that the lake grass has gotten a lot longer, and occasionally my foil does get tangled up in some of it, and it becomes a bit of an issue and slows me really down. You can also hear how rhythmic my pumping is now, so it's definitely a lot more even. Alright, we're going to do a new stab today. We're going to do one of the skinnies. This is a 358/35, aspect ratio of 12.47, and I'm pairing it with the 1310. I had a Zoom session with the legendary Yvonne where he reviewed my technique. One of the big takeaways was to switch to a skinny stab to become more efficient. I recommend having a session with him if you want to improve your pump foiling. He gave me a lot of great pointers and tips. I'll put a link in the description to him if you're interested. Here I'm just getting a feel for the skinny stab, and it definitely makes your front wing feel totally different. I found that it definitely didn't take as much energy to pump. However, it felt a lot more squirrely and unstable. Once I got used to it though, I would not go back to the bigger stabs. It's just not efficient compared to the skinnies. I found it so much easier to stay high up on the mast with the skinny. So that's my pump foil journey so far. So I figured I'd leave you with a few of my stats, so if you're learning, you can get a sense of how long it took me to get to where I am right now. I estimate I'm around 50 or more sessions with about 3,000 starts, with time on foil around 8 hours. This is averaged out as the better I got, the less tries I did per session. Not bad for the first season. It's getting colder, so the water is going to be more viscous, which will make pumping harder. There is frost on the ground today. I'm going to pump foil as much as I can until the lake freezes over. I'll probably hit the ocean with my foil assist board once that's finished. Which, by the way, if I didn't mention, I'm building one. Hopefully I'll get better at catching waves, and next season my plan is to be able to catch waves consistently and also try free foiling. I'm consistently almost hitting a minute. Here, I would have done it, but I ran into a cement block that was used to anchor the dock. Well, I hope you enjoyed my journey, and if you're learning to pump foil, you gotta just keep at it. Let me know in the comments how your pump foil journey's going. I'll see you in the next one.